Good morning, everyone. A little bit about myself. I am Scheiber, as he said. I am the technical writer and quality administrator at American Governor Company.
You won't worry.
What?
I'm sure you won't worry.
Also high challenge. I've been with American Governor Company for going on 3 years now, and today I'm going to give you a presentation that's mostly geared towards documentation and standardization and how they go hand in hand and why that's a good idea for businesses to pursue. And we'll get started. So imagine this. An aging plant contacts a vendor to upgrade existing hydraulic equipment. The vendor requests drawings and other specifications for the plant's existing equipment in order to understand how the plant works. However, the customer can only supply bits and pieces of documentation that have been archived. The rest is tribal knowledge or has been lost to time and employee turnover, if it ever existed at all. As a result, the plant must spend extra money and the vendor must take time to recreate drawings in order to design the upgraded equipment. Or this scenario. A new operator is hired to replace one who is retiring. However, no current standards or documentation exists to aid in the training of this new operator. The retiring operator does his best to educate the new operator, but the time he has is far from enough to impart all of his knowledge. The new operator is ultimately left on his own to manage plant operations. What do these two scenarios have in common? A lack of documentation anchored by a standardized system. In today's discussion, I would like to explore process standardization used to bring repeatability, ease of understanding, and ultimately innovation to any hydro businesses seeking to improve unit availability and the cycle time of projects. We're going to take a look at a few real-life case studies that American Governor has experienced, explore how standardization can specifically improve hydro businesses, and discuss the benefits, concerns, and best practices for implementing a standardized system. So first of all, what are standards? Pretty basic question. Standards are designed to ensure the reliability of the materials, products, services, and methods people use every day by bringing organization, repeatability, and measurability. Standardization is fundamentally about increasing efficiency by prescribing a set of universal requirements that enable sustained improvements and innovation. In my experience as a technical writer and as a quality administrator, I found that a lack of standardized systems and standardized processes goes hand in hand with a lack of documentation. A standard many will have heard of is ISO 9001, they've been in the mud, which is an international quality management standard that invites organizations to write what they do and do what they write. I reference this because of its heavy emphasis on process management and standardization as vital in creating and sustaining quality outputs, which most hydro businesses are concerned with. To highlight why standardizing and documenting processes is a vital practice, we'll take a look at two real-life situations we've encountered and where these shortcomings led to increased expenses and decreased unit availability. So case study one involves a customer in the Southeast U.S. who contracted American Governor to conduct a digital governor upgrade following a previous upgrade to their analog equipment almost 2 decades prior. The project hit a snag when it became apparent that the customer had outdated and incorrectly documented CAM curves, which are needed for unit control programming. With no documentation available, the customer had to ship their equipment to AGC at their own expense, and an engineer at AGC was tasked with rebuilding the curves from scratch, causing a week-long delay in the project and preventing unit operation at specific head levels until the proper data could be entered into the newly upgraded system. The second case study involves a customer also located in the Southeast who had previously hired another manufacturer to upgrade their governor controls equipment. However, once that vendor had installed the upgraded controls, the customer was unable to make the newly installed PLCs communicate with the existing HMI system because of a lack of design specification on the software code contained within the new PLCs. The software had been updated by the vendor multiple times without proper documentation of the updates that were made. To resolve the incompatibility issues, AGC had downloaded, translated, and updated the PLC code to create standardized and documented code throughout the customer's multiple plants. This, of course, at extra time and cost expense. Similar to my introductory scenarios, these cases have a glaring commonality: disorganized or incomplete project files which resulted from a lack of a standardized way of managing their systems. And these examples are a microcosm of the hydro industry at large. So why does hydro specifically need a greater push for the adoption of standardized process systems? Well, when new equipment upgrades are called for to ensure the continued reliable operation of a plant, a lack of documentation of how original equipment was configured or built can be detrimental to a project, leading to longer outages and more expensive project cycles. Furthermore, in the coming decades, as everyone is well aware, It is estimated that the hydro workforce is going to expand perhaps as much as 2 to 3 times where it currently stands. With the influx of new workers comes the inevitable discussion of how to train them and quickly. Many employees, particularly in the age of online training and education, rely on work instructions, tip sheets, guidelines, and other pieces of documentation when learning these new systems. Lastly, in today's modern hydro industry, public and private utilities and their vendors are under constant pressure to seek greater quality management solutions. Standardizing and documenting best practices can help meet these demands for quality control by minimizing the variability of outputs. So how does standardization benefit a business in general? Well, there are multiple ways. First, the homogeneity of tools and processes. An engineering firm, for example, that has standardized design practices has fewer specifications, cleaner drawings, and reduced variability of design in general. Greater response time and customer service. If a business has a standard way of responding to issues or requests, response time is faster, leading to greater supportability of customers. A standardized system is easy to support and maintain and eliminates data islands and inconsistent processes across different sites within a company. Quality control. The best way to spot an issue is to notice deviations from the standard practice. Products produced using a standard system of quality control have consistent quality. This in turn leads to increased customer service and repeatability as customers learn to associate businesses with quality outputs. Training devices. As I mentioned, when processes and procedures are standardized and documented, it is easier to disseminate that knowledge among new hires and transfers into different departments. Cost effectiveness. Standardization has proven to be cost effective and has been shown to reduce manufacturing costs by roughly 50%. For instance, having standard equipment parts helps to drive early decisions in the engineering design cycle, eliminating the time otherwise spent recreating the figurative wheel. Lastly, the efficacy of existing processes and continual improvement. Standards help enable top management to assess the efficacy of existing processes. Evaluation of processes and procedures is easier when they are standardized and documented, and evaluation criteria allows a plant owner or manager to identify training and improvement opportunities. For all its benefits, standardization can imply monotony, but with standardization comes the ability to establish measurable metrics, which in turn can be used to evaluate performance and productivity. Some also argue that standardization hinders employee innovation, but at its core, the standardization of systems is meant to eliminate inefficient, ill-defined, and conflicting alternatives to an accepted process. Thirdly, while there is a cost associated with standardizing and documentation in both time as well as money, there is a greater cost in the lack of quality outputs and longer project timelines. Lastly is the age-old mentality of this is how we do things, which can work for some processes and procedures, but ultimately eliminates that innovation and implies a stagnant and inefficient mindset. So what are some methods and best practices of standardizing systems? There are many standards which exist which prescribe methodologies and systematic approaches to creating standardized infrastructure. The first one that comes to mind, as I previously mentioned, is ISO 9001 and other quality standards which ask what's the best and most efficient way of doing things. Businesses that focus on quality management by adhering to a standard consistently provide products and services that meet customer requirements, facilitate opportunities to enhance customer satisfaction, address risks and opportunities, and demonstrate conformity to quality requirements. Documentation in general, and I am a technical writer, so of course I'm going to push this, is a once and future best practice for creating a standardized system. Without standardizing processes, anything you document might do more harm than good. However, documenting what you do will help you to understand your own processes better so that you can identify the pain points of any process or procedure. Many may balk at the idea of writing, but documentation does not necessarily have to exist in a written format. More and more, I've found businesses using documenting tools in the form of flowcharts, training videos, phone and tablet applications, gamification, and interactive troubleshooting guides to convey information to end users. Business process mapping, which graphically presents a process as a map in the form of a swim lane diagram or something similar, is also a great alternative, which helps people to visualize processes and assess their efficacy and methods of improvement. Another best practice is to explore and potentially invest in enterprise resource planning systems such as NetSuite or IQMS and other ancillary technologies. These technologies make use of standardized systems seamless and easy by supporting process adherence, saving time and providing data integrity. I myself have used SharePoint in multiple companies that I've worked for, which is not an ERP system, but it has proven successful as a means of document management and information dissemination, and has helped to drive process improvement in an indirect way. So the most important tool in a business's arsenal is the commitment of top management to changing embedded processes. Without that commitment, it's easy to fall back on that, oh, that's just how we do things mentality, whether the things we do are efficient or not. Thank you.